Some brands offer you low finance, or cashback, or servicing.
Renault don't do ors. We do ands. The Renault Kadjar with 1.91% APR and €1,000 cashback and 3 years servicing, saving you thousands. Renault, the brand with the ands. Visit your local Renault dealer. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply. Deposit required. Subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
Hey everybody, it's Dan Z. I am here for a very special solo review show. Now, as far as the movie goes, I don't want you to worry. This isn't going to be a spoiler thing. In fact, I'm barely going to talk about the actual movie itself on this particular podcast. Now, show number 124 is going to be a bit more in-depth as far as the review of the film. I've got a very special guest who's going to also attend the premiere, and he and I are going to talk about the film in a little bit of detail, but that's not going to be spoilery either. This show is a very special show because it was recorded on the actual day of our 5th anniversary, and you hear clapping from the classroom next door. So we'll just pretend like it's for the show. That'll work fine. But you're going to hear a couple things. First, you're going to hear me talking in the press room at the press conference, just sort of my overall babbling about how excited I am and the things I experienced at the press conference. Then you're going to hear the audio from the press conference and listen about 35 minutes in. You'll get to hear my question that I asked to Ron Howard that he and the Kasdans and Donald Glover responded to. And that was awesome, which I'll talk about that at the beginning of the show here as well. And then after the press conference, James Burns from Jedi News joins me and interviews me and asks me about my overall experiences with the red carpet, the premiere, the Falcon, and all the things that happened over this incredible 3-day span of Star Wars and Solo. It was tremendous. Again, thanks everybody for your support online and through social media and your emails and texts and phone calls. It's been wonderful. I really like that this was something that happened, that I could experience it with each of you, and I hope that you felt like you're a part of it because you very much are. None of this happens without you, without your support, and I appreciate it so very much. And I also want to send a shout out to a couple of people who have made a big difference in making this all happen. For one thing, none of this happens without MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. I went to Disneyland. I got to go to Los Angeles. I needed to arrange everything travel-wise, so Mouse Fan Travel set me up. They make things easier. They arrange everything. They call or email you with questions right away, so there are no surprises that show up on vacation because you know how that can be and how that can really throw things off. Everything went smoothly because of Mouse Fan Travel. And this is something you'll need to consider because summer is coming up. If you're planning on going to Disneyland or Disney World or just anywhere with a family vacation, they will take care of your flight and your hotels, transportation, make it as easy and stress-free as possible so you can actually enjoy your family vacation. So be sure to check out Mouse Fan Travel. Again, thank you so much to them for helping make this trip a reality. Also, I want to thank Cufflinks.com. They sent me the cufflinks, the lapel pin, the socks, and the tie that I wore, and the tie clip that I wore on the red carpet that you saw on Instagram and Twitter. They made me look a little bit extra fancy, and I really appreciate them for that, so thank you, Cufflinks. I also want to thank Sarah Woloski from Skywalking Through Neverland. She helped me a lot. She took some video for me and for the things that happened on the Falcon, on that Falcon traveling exhibit. She helped video me walking on the night, returned the favor for her as well, so we helped each other out. And the Skywalkers are always great at that, so I appreciate them very much. And Sarah helped me supply the audio from the press conference because mine didn't take as well as I would have liked. So this is Sarah's audio. So thank you again so much, and be sure to check out Skywalking Through Neverland. Without further ado, here is me from the press junket, followed by the press conference, and then finally my interview with James Burns. Thanks so much, everybody. We will be back very, very soon.
So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this incredibly special episode of Coffee with Kenobi. Today, the day I'm recording this, is actually the 5th year anniversary of the show. May 12th, 2013 is when Corey and I started the show. You've heard this story before, perhaps 18 hours to record it, and we got 20 minutes of audio. And then, here we are, 5 years later, and I am at the solo press conference. I am at the junket. I had my picture in the Falcon with Chewbacca, who talked to me, by the way, and know the show, which I got to tell you about that in a little bit. And I asked them a question at the press conference and got to speak with Ron Howard and Donald Glover and the Kasdans. They looked me right in the eye and answered my questions. And I am in Star Wars heaven. I mean, this is absolute Xanadu for me. Can't even tell you how grateful and appreciative I am of this amazing experience and opportunity. The support, the love, the shares, the retweets, everything that you've all done for this show is paid off in absolute spades. There's so many places to go, so many places to go from this, and I haven't even had a chance to talk about the movie yet. So I want to do that, but I got to be careful because there's an embargo, and I don't want to spoil anything anyway. But I had a great time at the film. It's extremely really fun. It's an extremely contagious experience. The masterful thing about this movie, for me anyway, is Alden Ehrenreich. This is a daunting task to take the persona of Han Solo, especially with the immense shadow that is Harrison Ford. And I can honestly tell you, as being one of the biggest Harrison Ford fans around, I mean, that's just, of course, my opinion, logical fallacy, he made me forget about Ford. Like, he really did. He's that charming. He's that ebullient. It was a remarkable feat. Every time he was on screen, I was just drawn to it because he's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Donald Glover is, of course, tremendous. He's as you would expect. I mean, there was no risk factor there because he was just so cool and well established in his own right as the kind of person that he is. Of course, Chewbacca. It's more of a Chewbacca story than I think any Star Wars movie. You get to see a little bit of a different part of him, which is fantastic. Emilia Clarke brings more to the table than I expected because I knew she'd be great, and I knew she's got some incredible, street cred as an awesome actress. But man, she steals scenes. She brings back some really cool things from the lore of Star Wars of the past 40 years that I didn't expect. She makes it pretty powerful. She leaves an impact. She might be one of the better characters we've had since Disney took over, quite honestly. Paul Bettany is chilling. In the press conference, he said it was so great to go from Vision, who's absolutely good, to someone who's deliciously evil like Dryden, and he most definitely absolutely is. This is hard to address because I'm used to bouncing this off of other people, and I just have me to babble, and I could babble for hours and hours and hours, but there's only so much time in the day, so I'll try to get to the high points. For one thing, the first thing I want to talk about is the red carpet event. That was tremendous. That was an absolute life-changing experience. I walked in, had the Darth Vader suit from Oppo Suits, wearing the apparel from cufflinks.com. I had the lightsaber tie bar. I had Millennium Falcon cufflinks and a lapel pin. And I had a Darth Vader tie and Vader socks. And it was great. In fact, I got a lot of compliments from a lot of people, including people from Lucasfilm, about the outfit. So thank you so much to Cufflinks for doing that, for sharing those with me. That was really awesome of you. And then, so I walked the red carpet. You go through these different, you check in, and they look for your name. And, of course, with a name like Zare, I'm the very last person to be on the list, so that was pretty easy to find my name. Walk around the corner, my son and I, and all of a sudden you're in this huge room, and there's these tables with letters of the alphabet, and you see your name, or you see the letters. So I go back to the Z, which is in blue, which is great because blue is my favorite color. I get my ID, which is a little lanyard, and we're not allowed to take pictures of the lanyard, and they were very specific about that, which I found a little surprising, but that's fine. Not exactly a sacrifice. So put it on. And right away, you're at the red carpet. I see Andy and Anthony interviewing people, and there's this huge crowd. And basically, for the red carpet, you have two paths to take. On the left side is for the stars and the talent that are in the film or that helped to make the film. And the right is the press and the guests. So I go to the right, and it's a much, much smaller path than the huge path of the stars, naturally. Wind around, try to take some pictures. There's people all over the place, dressed to the nines. And then you walk around, and I'm underneath the Falcon. So I took a bunch of pictures of the Falcon, which is pretty really cool to see that, naturally. And then you walk around another corner, and you're in the giant hallway, which you saw on our Twitter feed and on Facebook and on Instagram and on Patreon. If you're a Patreon contributor, I put some exclusive stuff there, especially on the Lens Factor. Lens Factor, that's not even a thing, especially on Lens. And you walk basically very, very slowly, I certainly walk very slowly. You just kind of watch and you take pictures by some of the canvases that have the logo for Solo on it, and you just hope that people will walk by. And on the left side of the red carpet is like this huge thing called the Pin, and that's where all the heavy hitters are, like Good Morning America, Entertainment Weekly, E! News, foreign press outlets from all over the globe, all over the place. And they just, basically they're there hoping that the stars will walk by and you can get a chance to ask one of the stars a few questions. And the people on the right, which is me, you just kind of get to walk around and just look. And you just hope that people will walk by and you get a chance to take a picture or maybe shake their hand or something like that. But as you're going, they're very specific about where they want you to go. And they're really worried about you holding up traffic. And honestly, there really wasn't a ton of traffic because they keep it moving pretty well. And it's so well spaced out because it's such a huge place. So basically what I did was I would get to the end, and there's this huge display of the Falcon's control center made out of Legos, and this gigantic Solo world premiere image, which you saw pictures of. So you take pictures by that, and then they say, do you want to go into the theater, or do you want to loop around and go on the red carpet again? So I went around on the red carpet, I think, 4 different times, and I'm so glad that I did, because here are some of the people, and you may have seen pictures of this, here are some of the people that I got to talk with, or get a picture with, or just see. So I got to see Paul Bettany, one of the first celebs. I saw Peter Mayhew, just said hello to him. And Paul Bettany was on the other side, so I didn't get to say anything to him. And then the ultimate thing happened. I turn around, and I see the hair of George Lucas, of the actual George Lucas. I see his gray hair, slicked back as it is. And I looked at my son, I said, there's George Lucas. There's George Lucas. And he looked at me and goes, I know. So I turn around, and I'm looking, and there's no one between me and George except for this little tiny rope that, barricades the red carpet. And I thought, I'm going to get a picture with him. I'm going to get a picture. I'm going to talk to George. And he walks by, and there's no one with him. There's his handlers on the other side of me. And I reach out, and I pat him on the back. So I got to touch George Lucas. And I said, hey, George, thank you so much for everything. Can I get a quick picture with you? And he looked at me, and he looked me up and looked me down, looked at my Vader suit, and he said, I'm sorry, I think I have to keep walking. And he walked away. And I was in absolute heaven. He could have actually said to me, you look like a camel, and you smell like tomato sauce. And I would have been equally as happy, because I didn't care. I got to talk to George Lucas and pat him on the back, and we had an exchange. Even though it was, 10 seconds long, it was the most amazing 10 seconds as a Star Wars fan I have ever experienced, because I never thought I'd get to talk to George Lucas. I mean, that's it, right? That's the pinnacle. Turns out that was just the start, believe it or not. Next thing I know, I'm walking down. Shortly after talking to George, and my legs were actually wobbly. Like, they were shaking. I was so keyed up and just so excited and so in awe of the entire thing. I look up, and there's Bob Iger, and it's the exact same thing. There's really no one between he and I. So I go, hey, Bob, excuse me, Bob Iger. And he turns around, he smiles at me, and I stick out my hand, he shakes it, and I said, Bob, I want to thank you so much for the direction you've taken Disney and Lucasfilm and Marvel. You've added so much to us, and I really appreciate all these stories you've been able to tell. And he smiled. He said, thank you very much. And he shook my hand again, and I said, my name is Dan Zayer, and I'm from Coffee With Kenobi. And I held up my phone case and showed him the logo, and he smiled, and he just kind of goes, uh-huh. I'm sure I had no idea who I was, but he does now, because I made sure to tell him. And he was just super cool. And I got a picture with him, which you probably saw as well. And I thought, okay, I've got George, I've got Bob Iger. I mean, really, the rest is gravy. So then it was even better. I mean, I got to see Ray Park. I got a picture with him. And then I talked to Leland Chee for about 10 minutes. I got a picture with him. He's awesome. Very, very generous, always. Cool to talk to. Let's see, who else? As far as the red carpet, I think that's it. And then we went in and watched the movie, which I'll talk about in the next segment. But that was a whole other world walking in that theater, which is the Dolby Theater where the Oscars are, which is tremendous. And we watched the movie. The movie was over. We went to the after party, and that was just like a cornucopia of awesome. Let's see, the people I got to talk to or chat with would be Jason and Amanda Ward. And I've seen Jason a number of times. I never met Amanda, so that was nice. Talked to Brian Young. He came up and asked me about the movie. In fact, I talked to Brian a couple of times. We've helped each other take pictures of stuff. I got my picture with Eunice, who was CWK, and that was great. And he was, of course, extremely tall and very, very friendly and warm. I walked by Woody Harrelson a couple times, introduced myself to Taylor Gray, got a picture with him, talked to Andy for a while, Andy Gutierrez, and got some pictures with her. And she's always super cool. She's very cool. I mean, she's real. You know, when you see her on TV and on the Star Wars show and whatever, that's the kind of person she is. She's really friendly and nice and very generous with her time, which I appreciate. I talked to Dave Filoni. Didn't get a picture with Dave, but I asked him a question if he was in a cameo, because there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where Dryden stabs somebody and they fall over, and they have a lot of facial hair, and I thought, that looks like Filoni that just was supposedly, killed in the film, the character that he was. And I asked him, and he laughed. He goes, no, that's not me. I want the movies to be good, so I don't do any cameos. So, okay, I know for sure that's not, according to Dave. Talked to Tracy, of course, a long time publicity from Lucasfilm. Let's see. Talked to Daniel Kennedy, talked to Justin Bolger, talked to Kristen, all from Lucasfilm. I talked to Concetta Parker, talked to her husband. Tried to talk to Sam Witwer, but he was pretty busy. Gosh, who else? I don't know. I'm sure it's just sort of all kind of scrambled together. I can't even tell you what a surreal experience this is. I mean, I've been a Star Wars fan all my life, as have all of you. And to get the opportunity to do this whole weekend experience, especially on the 5th year anniversary of the show, amazing. And then the Traveling Falcon experiences here, so I got to walk through it. And I got a lot of just one-on-one time with the entire ship because there was no one there, and they have it segmented out in such a way that it's very, very easy to do. And then, honestly, it sounds crazy, but I know you've seen the pictures. I got to get in the Falcon cockpit, and they have Chewbacca in there. And Chewbacca, the costume for Chewbacca, I mean, it looks like Eunice in there. And just the way the thing is constructed, it's absolutely brilliant. And they have it professionally shot. They take your phone, they professionally do it for you. And I was so tickled. I think I was as nervous for walking through the Falcon and getting my picture in the cockpit as I was anything. And so I took like 5 or 6 pictures. Actually, there have been more like 12, but I just kind of narrowed it down to 5 or 6. And then at the end, Chewbacca, the guy who was inside, looked at me, and with the Chewbacca eyes, and he says, "You're DNZ, right? Coffee with Kenobi, with Corey." He goes, "I never miss a show. You are awesome. Keep up the great work." And I thought, Chewbacca just told me he knows me and he knows Coffee with Kenobi. Now, it wasn't Eunice, but just the notion that actually happened was just so funny and so unique and wondrous and surreal. I mean, really, you can't make this stuff up. And I apologize for the babbling, but this was amazing. This was I want to say it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, but it's not. When you get a taste of something like this, if you're hungry and you're prepared and you do your very, very best to be your very, very best, I believe good things happen, and today is living proof of that. This whole weekend is living proof of that. So the press conference, everybody was there. I was in the second row, so I had great pictures of everyone, and I tried to tweet and take pics as I was going along, and hopefully you enjoyed that. And at the end, they said, "We have time for one more question." And I stuck my hand up, and Anthony Carboni looked at me and he goes, "The gentleman in the blue shirt." And so I asked my question, which you'll hear in the press conference, and Ron Howard looked at me straight in my eyes and talked to me for a few minutes. And then the Kazans looked at me and talked, especially Larry's son. And then at the end, Donald Glover looked at me, and I made eye contact, and he answered my question. So, and honestly, I'm not making this up, my question generated more discussion amongst the entire cast than any of the questions. I mean, that CWK family, that was really neat. I mean, I'm a little choked up because I'm very happy. I'm very excited this happened. I don't know what to say. I'm gushing, but it's so wonderful. It's so wonderful. I tried a lot of press conferences to get questions, and it just didn't work out. But today, again, on the 5th anniversary, that happened, and I got a lot of good feedback after about the question. And that's my thing. I like questions better than I like answers anyway. So that was something I had just sort of been marinating over. And I'm to a point now where I don't really like to write questions before I talk to someone, even in this instance, because I find myself tripping over how I word it and how I write it, and it just isn't natural. I'd rather be organic. I just kind of trust myself that I'm going to come up with things that are going to work. And this did. You got to trust your gut, and you can't be afraid to fail. And that's exactly the approach I took, and it worked out beautifully. So I will go ahead and take a break. I'm going to try to record my thoughts on the movie later. It might be better to talk about the movie with other people who have seen it. I think it'll be more organic. But that being said, much more to come. Thank you so much, everybody, for being on this ride on social media. I got to type up my review for this thing, and I'm still at the press conference, and the thing is amazing. This is just a huge room. There's so much going on. And I can't wait to share so much more with you. Again, thank you so much for these 5 years of Coffee with Kenobi. Can't wait to see what the next 5 are going to bring us. Be right back after the break.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Hi. My name is Anthony Carboni. I am one of the hosts of the Star Wars Show, which you can watch every Wednesday on the Star Wars YouTube, StarWars.com, and the Star Wars Facebook. And I am so excited to be your moderator today. We have a lot of amazing people here, so I want to jump right into it. I just want to say, photos and videos are fine. Please, nothing that is location tagged. That's the only thing we want to be careful of. And now, without further ado, I want to bring out everybody from Solo. This is very exciting. First of all, our director, Ron Howard. Down there. We also have Paul Bettany, Dryden Voss, Jonas Suotamo, Chewbacca, Emilia Clarke, Kira.
Excellent.
Alden Ehrenreich, Han Solo. Donald Glover, Lando Calrissian. Woody Harrelson, Tobias Beckett. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, L33. Tandy Newton, Val. And our wonderful writers, Lawrence Kasdan. And Jonathan Kasdan. Thank you all so much for coming out this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Now, Ron, you have made some huge films, some of the greatest movies of all time. What was it like making a Star Wars movie, though? How was that different?
Well, it's the galaxy far, far away. And, the level of anticipation is really unlike anything that I've done. Even some pretty big titles with a lot of fan interest. And you fall into it, and it's amazing. It was a little bit, I began to recognize, something similar to the Beatles documentary that I took on. Because I'm at a point in my life where I like experimenting. I like to take some chances. I'm not too worried about the outcome. I want to just have the creative experience. And I sort of felt that way about jumping into a Star Wars movie. But I also felt that way about jumping into the Beatles documentary. And then I could tell from the moment it was announced, Ron, don't this up. That was the bomb. So I immediately, felt the same thing as related to this. And I thought, well, of course, the fans care, and they should care.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to note, Star Wars movies known for incredible practical sets, also for visual effects. How did you feel about combining the two? Did you want to lean more towards one? Did you want to experiment with both in a big way?
As great as visual effects and CGI is, even all the great CGI VFX supervisors will tell you, in camera is always what you want to go for first. And so with the Millennium Falcon and with the great sets and so forth, the approach here always was try to get as much in camera as you could, and then build from that. And that's what's so magical and amazing about ILM and what they can do to make the experience as palpable and immersive as it could possibly be. It's a blast because the people around a movie like Solo are so dedicated to not just what's existed before, but what else they could do within that framework, within that universe, that galaxy. And creatively, it's just unbelievably stimulating for a filmmaker.
Yeah, It looks amazing. It came out just absolutely beautiful.
Bradford Young did a great job with the look, which is a little different than the movies have looked before, and an aesthetic that that I thought was incredibly exciting.
Yeah. Lawrence and Jonathan, I wanted to talk to you about this as well because this is a story that you have been wanting to tell for a very long time. You were talking to me on the Star Wars show about how much you loved Han and wanted to tell a Han story. When the two of you sat down together, was this a story that had been bubbling sort of in your head for a while, or did you sit down and create it fresh together?
Well, the story hadn't been bubbling for a long time. What had been bubbling for me was from the moment when I was relatively young and I first saw Han Solo in the cantina. And I immediately sparked to him. He lifted up the whole movie instantly, and I loved the movie. But at that moment I thought, oh, this movie's just got me. This is the kind of character that I have loved always, and it's been so important in all the movies that I care about. This is a character who's reckless, who's cynical, who doesn't trust anybody, who's a little bit stupid. I love that. He just does things he shouldn't do. He gets in over his head instantly, and you can see that in the brilliance of George Lucas's cantina scene. It's just a few minutes, and you get everything about who this guy is.
And I think he wanted me to write it with him because I am all those things. It was funny because Larry had decided to get involved in Star Wars based on Han. That was the movie he wanted to make first. He got pulled into Force Awakens, and when he came out, he said, I need somebody to do this with me. And I was sort of the obvious choice for the above reasons, but also because I shared a deep love of this, and I came at it from a totally different place than Larry did. I had grown up with Star Wars, I'd grown up playing with the toys, and we thought that somehow between our two dynamics, between me as a fan and him as an older Jedi Master, we could figure out some sort of dynamic where we could forge a story that felt both sort of contemporary and true to the spirit of Solo.
Yeah. And hearing about how just seeing the first few moments of Han was just such a huge thing for everybody who's a Star Wars fan. Alden, what did it feel like for you to kind of step into that and sit down in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, it's really wild. It's really exciting. It's kind of bigger than you can even wrap your head around. And it's wonderful. Particularly being in the Millennium Falcon is very, very cool, and very much like being in the cockpit. You kind of get into the cockpit. For me, it was two things. One, you get in, and you can't believe you're in it, and it's so surreal, and that's what everybody you bring to set wants to see, and they have that experience too. And then, a couple months into shooting in it, you're inside of it, you're flying it, you know where the buttons are, you know how the chair feels, you know the yoke, and you feel like, okay, this is kind of like my ship now. And that is deeply gratifying.
And I wanted to bring up, you had kind of an experience this morning, an experience that was very unique.
Unbelievable. Oh my God. So I had lunch right before we started shooting, I wanted to talk to Harrison just to kind of pay respect and have him give us the blessing for the film. And so we had lunch, I guess, 2 years ago or something, and he was really encouraging and really supportive. And then we went off, shot the film and everything like that. And today I was doing an interview, and they were talking about, is there anything else you'd like to ask him? Because he's, and I was like, well, I don't know. And they're like, well, you have your chance. And he was behind me, and he came and just is so effusive about the movie, and it meant so much to me. And I know for Ron and Kathy and everybody, it's just such a huge deal to have him really genuinely love it. I really genuinely enjoy the film, and it meant a lot to me that he took the time to come out here and do that.
It's such a wonderful moment.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was awesome. I was
And then Donald, you stepping into the shoes of Lando here. I know you were a big Star Wars fan. Your father was a huge Lando fan, you were telling me. What was that kind of experience like for you? Is that a character that you ever kind of pictured yourself taking on?
I think as much as like any like 7-year-old boy like does, like it was like, yeah, like of course you pretend to be him, and like, you know, I had like a Darth Vader 2, and Darth Vader had like a lightsaber, and I bit it off, and I gave it to Lando, and then my mom wouldn't let me have the lightsaber anymore because she thought I'd choke on it, and like it was really cool. I never thought I would play. The first, when I heard they were making these, I told my agent, I was like, if they're making anything with Lando in it, I have to be Lando. And he was like, I hear you, I don't like your odds. And that was exactly what I needed to hear, like, because I really did like audition like it was like the only role I wanted in the world, because it really was. So I was just really happy to be part of this experience, and like it was really cool. But yeah, my dad kind of imprinted me with this kind of Star Wars longing, because it does feel like the Bible to me in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing to see the two of you together, and also to see you, Jonas, as Chewbacca. Seeing the three of you together playing these characters. I mean, Chewie is such a popular figure with the fans, and I mean, you tell me, like, anytime you're in the Chewie costume, it doesn't matter who people are, they want a Wookiee hug. It's got to be kind of, like, amazing to be this incredibly loved character.
Yes, I mean, it's just something that I really, when I got to know that I had a chance, and then when I got to know that I was going to be playing this character, I really couldn't sleep at night, and I was so excited because this was a life changer for me. I was borderline jobless when I got this role. You know, I mean, my now fiance, my then girlfriend, have seen me going from living with my mom to becoming Chewbacca. That's the span of our relationship. And she says I've been like this the whole time. It's just now that this behavior suits me. It's funny because this character is so loved, and Peter Mayhew, who created this character along with George Lucas, has been so instrumental in giving me his blessing and giving me some tips in our week-long session together how to be this character, and seeing him.
You went to a Chewie boot camp.
Exactly, yeah. And the tickets were all sold out, but I was able to squeeze in regardless, and it was fun because I never could have understood what went on underneath the mask of Peter Mayhew. And now that I got to know that, it was so easy going into shooting this film, which is so much about Han and Chewie and everyone, that it was so important to get right for this film.
Well, it was absolutely amazing to watch. It was an unbelievable performance, and it really is. It's more of a Chewie movie than any Star Wars movie has ever been.
Good at that.
And in addition to seeing these classic characters return, there are new members of the crew that are absolutely amazing as well. Amelia, I want to talk a little bit about Kira. She has such an air of mystery around her. It's such a classic sort of femme fatale noir movie feeling whenever you see her in commercials and in clips. Tell me, what was it like kind of playing that, and what is her relationship with Han and the rest of the gang?
Yeah, playing mysterious is quite a difficult note, I've got to be honest. It was really fun. It's really difficult to talk about because she is a pretty mysterious character that you kind of need to keep tabs on throughout the movie. And so when promoting a movie that you can't really speak too much about, she's one of the harder ones to discuss. But we meet her quite early on with Han, and then they're separated for whatever reason. And when we find her again, she seems to have lived a pretty dark life in that time. So when you re-find her, you can't quite figure out what it is that's happened to her in the time that you haven't been with her, and who it is that she is now. And I think that's a question that kind of keeps coming up throughout the movie.
Yeah, it does feel like this is a movie that's very much, almost more than anything, it's about watching how different people handle having lives that are very full of adversity. And it's been very interesting to watch how each one of these characters kind of takes that on. One of the characters, obviously, is Tobias. Beckett very much feels like a Western gunslinger to me, who's sort of, he abides by a code, but he's not really going to tell you what that code is, just in case he needs to change the code, maybe. Can you tell us a little bit about what Beckett was like and kind of how you saw him?
Well, I felt it was a really easy character for me to play because he's a scoundrel and a thief, and, but I think really well written. And that's the thing that you have to be aware of. A lot of people who are Star Wars fanatics say this is their favorite Star Wars, which is really cool. But Larry and Jonathan really wrote an extraordinary script, and just at the right time, Ron came in and did his magic, and then you have all these wonderful characters, and so it's pretty cool to get to be in a Star Wars. It's also phenomenal.
Yeah, I would imagine. And then also in the crew, we have Val. I absolutely love Val Tandy. Absolutely amazing. The crew seems to have like a real rapport. It has obviously been through a lot together. What was that like kind of playing it, and how does that compare to sort of the vibe of the crew and everybody who played them on set?
Sorry,
just the relationship between the crew and then the actual relationship between all of you. How did they differ?
Oh, God. I mean, we would have fun. I mean, they were in extreme situations sometimes. The battle sequences. I mean, this room is honestly a quarter of the size of the, cavernous spaces that would be completely taken over. The production design was so amazing. So we would feel like we were in like real sort of battle scenarios with explosions going off and debris and like mud in places you didn't even know you had places. You know what I mean? Like really, it was like a nightmare. And the camaraderie between us was just humor. Always was humor. Just and because obviously we've been shooting for a long time, and some of the stuff that you share and just taking the piss out of each other all the time, because there'd be a lot of situations where helmets would come off and you got smeared and things would go wrong. A lot going wrong, by the way. So that camaraderie was really felt. We were really going into battle together. I mean, obviously, sort of fantasy, fun battle, but we were still going into battle.
Yeah, that sort of vibe of just everyone having fun really comes through. The movie itself has an incredibly fun vibe to it. And speaking of that, I want to talk about L3, Phoebe, who I just think is an incredibly fun character. She's so amazing. She is not like any droid we have ever seen in Star Wars before. Can you tell us a little bit about what makes her an individual and what you kind of tried to get across about L3 for the fans?
Well, L3 is a real inspiration to me, so thanks, guys. She's a self-made droid, so she created herself out of parts of other droids, which sounds kind of frightening, actually, when I put it like that. It's like, where did she get those bits? But she created herself out of astromech droids and protocol droids, and so she turned herself into a unique creature that's kind of taller, stronger, more independent than she originally was. So, and she's got a great attitude. And she has, she's very upbeat. Really fun to be around. She's fearless. She's uncensored. She's very funny, and she's a revolutionary. And she has an agenda, which is bigger than the sum of her parts, which is something that's really extraordinary for her character. And it was great to play that. Great to play a droid, with a message. She was great.
That's awesome. And then Paul. Dryden is legitimately terrifying, man. Dryden is spooky. I was very, very creeped out. How did you approach him, and what did you kind of want to do with that character? Because his vibe goes back and forth so quickly.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun to play, and again, it's written really beautifully. Thank you, guys. And I, having texted Ron, having said, "Hey, Ron, have you ever spent long winter evenings like I have, wondering why you're not in the Star Wars franchise?" and he said, "Give me a minute," and. And I was so I came on set really quickly, and he whispered oligarch in my ear, and I went, got it. And it was just lovely to play somebody having come from Avengers, where his vision is fundamentally good, just as somebody who's just deliciously bad and really okay with it. Just no neurosis, no guilt, just super happy about being evil.
And it is, when you bring it back to like the fun, like all of these characters are definitely having fun in their own way, and I think that's the creepiest thing about Dryden is he's having a lot of fun.
Oh, sure, he's really good at hurting people, and some people are really good at piano or whatever, and you got to practice, right? So he's always trying to keep his eye in.
I want to open it up to everybody in the audience here. I'm sure everybody has a ton of questions. Yes, you, sir, in the cap.
Hi, my question's for Ron Howard. So you came to this movie late. At that point, how hard was it to find the perfect role for your brother Clint?
He was in it,
Well, it was pretty damn easy. I did come into it, late, and there was a lot of work that Phil and Chris had done. Unfortunately, the creative differences had created. There was this circumstance where they were not going to carry on, and within that, there were a lot of things that were really strong and already worked, and we knew we wanted to keep, and then other things that hadn't been done yet. And other scenes that I was given the opportunity to sort of experiment with and explore. And I sat down with Larry and John, and we started talking about this, that, and the other. And there was this great sort of scene with L3, and it just sort of came up in conversation. That L3 needs somebody to be pissed off at. And I said, my brother. He's kind of easy to be pissed off at. And he's kind of funny when he's doing it.
It is always fun to kind of watch and be like, okay, where's Clint? Where's Clint? There he is.
The fact is, I love working with him. He's a great character actor. He's funny. He's smart. He's a great team player. And he's not in all my movies because if there's not something really juicy and fun for him to do, then of course I don't cast him. But in this case, I knew it would be fun, and he had a blast doing it. And
yeah, he was great. He was just like, hit me harder every time.
yeah. So that was fun.
Yes.
Hi, my question's for Alden. I wanted to ask you. I'm way over here. I wanted to ask you. You were speaking with Harrison Ford earlier. I was just wondering, did you study some of his movements, either from the previous film or just other films of his, or did you try to avoid that just to kind of make the character your own? Because I saw a lot of Han, early Han, in some of your movements and facial feature, when you moved your face and stuff.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that?
Yeah, like the way I went about it pretty much was to watch the original movies very early on, and just kind of absorb as much as I could, both of, I think mainly the character, how the character is operating in the world, and Harrison and the whole Star Wars universe, which is so rich and there's so much to it. And so I tried to kind of take in as much of that as I could very early, because I had the role for quite a long time before we actually shot. And then move into working on the part and kind of put all that aside and forget about it and play this guy where he is now in his life, because it's most important. I think that it feels like a real person. And so, so then I kind of moved into working on this story, this moment in time. Yeah.
My question is for everyone. My question is, what was the hardest scene to get right and why?
Hardest scene to get right and why? Does anything pop out to anyone?
I blew my first take, which was meeting everybody, and part of that was I had to shake hands with Chewbacca. I kind of started shaking his hand, then I kind of
It was so embarrassing for everybody.
It was. I went in for a cuddle, and everybody was like, actually, everybody was really relaxed about it and said, everybody does that. So.
Yeah, there must be a moment when you first step on and you're finally in costume, you're finally on a set, you're finally just standing in the middle of it, where it's got to be a little bit just sort of daunting and awe-inspiring in a way if you grew up with the films, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Every day. I mean, every day you're walking into a new set that these craftsmen and designers who work on these films are at the very height of the world. I mean, they're the best in the world. And you walk into these incredible environments with 300 different creatures that are actually there, that are actually built, and then you do your scene. Yeah.
When I remember there was the first day I went on set, and I had my son with me, and he was 2 years old, and he didn't know anything about Star Wars. He's 2, right? But we were in this amazing set. It was extraordinary. And I was chatting with the crew and stuff, and my kid just started to walk away, and we watched where he was going, and he was walking towards R2-D2. And everyone kind of moved to the side, and my kid just walked over, and the guy that was operating R2-D2, the remote control, saw my son and knew it was my kid, and started to make R2-D2 kind of chat to my kid, but not in language, in R2-D2 speak. And my son would kind of gabble back, and R2 gabbled to him, and then it ended, I kid you not, with my son hugging R2-D2. And that was the first impression my son has had of that character of Star Wars. But what I mean is, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. My little boy doesn't know about anything to do with Star Wars, but these characters have a kind of magnetism that is unparalleled. I mean, for all of us, when we were kids, I was 7 when the first movie came out. I'll never forget it. That scroll of white going into black, John Williams' music. This stuff imprints on your psyche, So, I mean, that's just, I think that it goes so far beyond even us as filmmakers, just the stuff that dreams are made of, really.
I think in terms of challenges that for me, I was very excited about the character relationships, because this is a little bit different than the other movies. It's really this one guy's adventure story. It's why I feel like in some ways it's kind of similar to Raiders of the Lost Ark, which Larry also wrote, but is a single hero's journey. And then there's a lot of fun in that journey, and there are a lot of twists and turns, but it's really about that character. We had that going with this, and so all of the different relationships were very important to me, because it's all about what impact all of these characters are going to have on this young Han Solo. So that was interesting. But what surprised me was how complicated and exciting and fun it was to stage the big action scenes, which is something that I hadn't done in a long, long time. And they were complicated, and sometimes it was hard, and sometimes it was physically difficult. And we would change things and add and revise. But the excitement was, again, making even the action scenes be cool, be Star Wars, but really be about testing Han Solo. What does this mean? What does this tell us about Han Solo? And so it sort of defined the way the action scenes would be cut, would be shot, and roll out. And it was challenging, but it was really fun and exciting to work on. And the big surprise for me is what a blast it was to do those action scenes.
Yes, in the front row.
Hi, this is Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland. And I had a question for Phoebe and perhaps the Kasdans. And there's a line in the movie where Lando says to L3, oh, can I get you anything else? And L3 says, equal rights. And I think that's one of the most hilarious lines in the film, because it's not only a commentary on what L3's character is, but it's a commentary on today. And so I wondered, did you come up with that?
Yes.
Or was that a line that the...
That is Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Love it. Yeah, set up. You guys set that up perfectly, though.
No, I mean, it's a real treat to work with everyone on this panel, but it's to be able to sort of write situations and then have performers and writers in their own right who can contribute a better idea on top of what you've created is a big part of it, and it makes us look good, and it makes everybody feel good, because there is always a way that these things can be enriched and made more on point with what it's supposed to be about, and that is a perfect example of something that just feels totally true to her character and to what we want it to feel like,
Yes, and right over here.
So my question is for Donald, and a quick comment for Ron. You had so many awesome capes in this film. Did you have a favorite, and did you get to take one home? And Ron, thank you for giving Warwick a line in an actual Star Wars film.
I had at the end of the film. There's a tiny white summer cape that stops right here. It's not functional at all. It's literally just to be like I'm here. And the function of the longer one. Oh, the function of the longer ones is, you can be on cold. A summer cape is literally just more fabric on your back. Just to state your claim, it's I'm not giving up on this cape thing. And I love that cape because it really is it's all flair. And no, I wasn't able to bring any capes home with me. I'm sure that Star Wars has that on lock stock, but the fur cape I had, they had extra material, and they made a pillow out of it for me, and now I have a pillow that I try and wear as a cape, but it
winds up being a summer cape.
Who do I have to talk to get that pillow made out of my costume?
Out of your costume?
You mentioned Warwick. What a great guy. Of course, he did Willow, but he'd been an Ewok before that, and so he's a tradition and another master. And the other thing is that he helps out with a lot of the characters and a lot of the droids and things like that, and he will come in. And he goes uncredited. He loves it, but the company is smart enough to bring him in and not only play a character, but also help with coaching and setting up and figuring out some of these behaviors. And he's a really creative guy and an old friend, and it was great to reunite with him.
Yeah.
And his daughter as well was there with us on set. And
yes.
In some of the droid fights, it's the two of them against each other, which was incredibly fun.
But I love that because that brings something into my mind, kind of honoring these traditions and these sort of things that everybody knows as part of the Star Wars universe. What I love about this movie is that there are these nods to things that everybody knows from Star Wars. But number one, they're kind of turned on their head a little bit. They're not what you expect. And number two, it's not a movie that's very much like, look at this Star Wars reference. There's a great balance of that stuff. And I would love to hear from Larry and John and from you, Ron, about how you kind of keep that balance for fans and still make the film have its own sort of feeling.
Well, I'm going to start and quickly throw that because I approach it, and I'm a fan, and I've always appreciated the movies, but I'm not encyclopedic. I don't know everything. I haven't seen everything. I haven't read everything. And so I came into this situation, and immediately, of course, I had to start working more off of instinct than anything else, and this great screenplay that I really believed in, and a cast that I certainly wouldn't have come, on board if I didn't love the cast and wasn't excited about working with them. But I immediately said, I'm going to treat this like it's a true story. I've done a lot of true stories, and I always have technical advisors around. And I sort of go for the heart, I go for the drama, the excitement of the narrative, of the story, and then I let the technical advisors tell me, where else it could go or what I might be overlooking. And that's honestly the way I approached this. And so many people around it were those guides for me, but I was just operating off my own imagination and my own sort of sense of what I'd like to see or where I think these characters could be going. But now they really understood it, and John in particular, who stayed throughout the production, he is encyclopedic, and he was awesome and in terms of contributing those sort of things and sort of evaluating them.
Yeah.
Well, when I got involved back on The Empire Strikes Back, I don't think I ever thought of it, this is Star Wars, Star Wars, Star Wars. I thought what had gotten me when I had no connection to it on A New Hope was this was a great story. And George had set up something that could go off in many different directions, and that would be wonderful for a long time. And I've never really changed my opinion of that. It happens to be a Star Wars story, but always first we were trying to tell a story that would keep you interested. You meet these people and you say, well, that's a great person, and now they're meeting a great person. And they're going to be in a lot of trouble together. And that is much more important to me than any particular Star Wars.
Yeah, we approach the movie much more in terms of, is there a kind of genre movie, a crime movie, a Western, that we could fit Han Solo into, a character that we loved and that comes out of a great tradition of Bogart characters and McQueen characters, and say, okay, how do we plug that guy into the kind of movie we love and the kind of story we want to see? And in doing so, we're able to sort of have along the way these moments that are familiar and that people connect with because they have personal relationships with these characters, and it gives it an added level of sort of pleasure, I think. But at its base, it's really trying to be its best version of a Western or of a crime movie.
I think we got time for one more. Let's go to you, sir, in the blue shirt. You've been raising your hand since the beginning.
All right, this question is for Ron or Alden or the Kazans. In this continually morally ambiguous world that we live in, what kind of challenges do you face when creating the character of Han Solo or even Lando?
Well, so much of it was the heavy lifting was really done by the screenplay, and then the great casting, which preceded me. And again, as I said, I wouldn't have come on board without that. So what I love is collaborating. I love collaborating with the Kazans. I love collaborating with this cast, and sort of rallying behind what was an opportunity that I think we all believed audiences could really enjoy. So it was always just, what can this scene be? What else can it be? What are the other choices? Engaging, incredibly talented, creative people to maximize what was a great opportunity. But you were asking about the cast too.
Yeah, I think let's go to Larry and John.
On that,
the question of moral ambiguousness and
That's not too difficult in the world we live in. I think that we're swimming in it every day. And what seems like a fantasy now and not as interesting to me is a thing that is a vision that doesn't take in how complicated people are. The fact that people we admire can do things we don't admire, that we're driven by forces that we may not be proud of. And then sometimes we rise to the occasion and do the right thing. And you can't be counted on that it's going to happen, but you hope that might happen. So that world is, for me, the world that we live in.
And Star Wars so often, and almost really up till this moment, has been a very classic story of the dark and the light, the good and the evil. And we saw this as an opportunity, and what was exciting to us about writing this was to really make a character movie where every character had some ambiguity to them, and everyone was sort of after their own particular ends. And that informed every stage of the writing. But yeah, there are challenges also to, when The New Hope came out, it was a different world. And, you hope as writers and as filmmakers and the entire cast that the world that we live in now is reflected in our art. And we try to be sort of faithful to what we think is appropriate for the times, and how our perception of Han would evolve in 2018.
That's my favorite part of the movie, really. I love that there are rich people and poor people in this movie, and there's you can go to the airport and you see immediately who's rich and who's poor, and why they're there. I just love it because it's really that was the part of reading it. I was like, oh, you get to see why Han is complicated. Even by the end, you're just maybe he did the wrong thing, but for the right reasons, or maybe he did the right thing, but for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely.
That's how everybody has to live. It's a rough world out there, and I really love that it's not simple, And
it's such a big part of what drives the movie for us is that he is centrally conflicted. at his core, there is this conflict, and it's beautifully laid out in A New Hope between his ideals and his desires. And he's constantly at war with that, and he's at war with that in this movie, and he's at war with it in all the movies that will follow in his life. And that's a very fun, sort of charged thing to write.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time. Thank you all for coming out, bringing questions. Cast and filmmakers of Solo, a Star Wars story, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow. We are back, and we're going to flip gears a little bit today. As you know, and we've been talking about on the show, I was fortunate to be a guest at the red carpet for Solo. It was my very first one. This gentleman that is on with us, he has been to more of these than just about anybody I know, and it's the great James Burns. James, thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolute pleasure. It's delighted to be back.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to do this a little bit differently because sure, I could ramble and yodel on for a while, and that would be fine. But I think it would be more fun, and James graciously offered to interview me so we could talk about this a little bit more. So, James, it's your coffee muck. I'm just here to soak in the atmosphere.
Well, before I continue, it would be remiss of me to be on the show and not to wish you and everybody on the network a huge 5th birthday, because that's a huge achievement.
Thank you so much. You've been such a mentor for us and a help in so many ways. So I very much appreciate that, and thank you for all your help for me and Coffee with Kenobi too.
Pleasure. So, you were in LA last week.
Yes.
And what were you doing there, Dan?
I flew out for the red carpet world premiere of Solo and the cast party, and then I got to go to the press conference and speak with the cast of the film.
So when did you get in? Was it Wednesday or Thursday?
I got in really early Thursday morning. We left here about 6 a.m. Central Illinois time and got to LA about 9:30.
And who's we?
Morning.
Who's we?
My oldest, Peyton, came with, and he wants to get into film. And he'd never been to Hollywood before, so we thought it would be really cool for him to go and see it, from that level, as a kind of like a goal for him to reach.
Okay. So this was his first time ever in Hollywood?
Yes, first time ever in Hollywood. He'd been to San Francisco once. I took him through Lucasfilm years ago, but he's never been to Hollywood.
So what did he think of the whole vibe there? Because, it's very different to anything else.
He loved it. He loved it so much. It took him a few hours to get acclimated, but once he did, I honestly think he would have stayed. And he made some contacts too, because my brother-in-law works there on the Penn and Teller show. Right. And Peyton went around through the houses where they're doing the editing and the post stuff, and he absolutely loved it. He loved it.
Fantastic. So you get to LA, and what's the first thing that you do?
First thing I do is we go and we check in, and Peyton was exhausted, so he went to bed right away because he had a hard time sleeping. He was so excited. However, when I was checking in, the guy at the front desk said to me, "Hey, if you're here," because I had a Lucasfilm hat on and my, it was very clear I was a Star Wars fan. He goes, "I bet I know why you're here." He goes, "Well, look at this," and he pulls out his phone and he shows me the picture of the Falcon they're building on Hollywood Boulevard. He said, "You better check that out." So I went upstairs and got Peyton in the room. I said, "I'm going to go check out the Falcon. Do you want to join?" He's like, "No, I'll just see you later. I'm really tired." So he crashed, and I ran out there. And fortunately, it was still early in the day, and they were just building it so you could see the construction. I went to the second and third level, took a lot of pictures, and I hate heights, but I just forced myself to peek over and take pictures anyway, and I didn't fall or drop my phone, so that was a success. Even talking about it makes my palms sweat. That's how much I dislike heights. And then I just went down on the ground and took some close pictures and took some video, and I just kept thinking, wow, this is very real. There's the Falcon.
And how was that, seeing the Falcon, so close?
It was glorious. I mean, I asked Leland Chi later what the scale was, and he said he had no idea. And it's a little bit smaller when you're underneath it than you realize. But just looking at it, just from a street level, it's glorious. It's hard to compare the size. You can see the pictures on our Instagram or Twitter or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it was very, very, very cool. So
underneath it, I understand it was all completely flat underneath, so you could walk underneath it.
Correct. Yeah, like the landing struts were up above, so the landing gear is probably about shoulder length to where I am. Right. So you could walk under it very easily. Even Eunice could have walked under it and not had to duck.
Okay, cool. So you went back a few hours later in your red carpet attire. So what were you wearing?
I was wearing the Oppo-suit's Vader suit that you wore to The Last Jedi.
Yes.
You were sort of my inspiration for that, actually, because I saw you wearing it. I'm like, oh, that looks good. I'm going to have to wear one of those.
It was pretty cool, actually.
It was very cool. And I was the only one that I could tell that was wearing it. And then I had Cufflinks was kind enough to sponsor me, and I wore a Vader lightsaber tie clip, and then I had some Falcon lapel pin and some Falcon cufflinks, and then I had a Vader socks, and I had a Vader tie, a red striped tie. So that was all courtesy of cufflinks. It was pretty slick. I got a lot of compliments for that.
Very cool, very cool. So you arrive on the red carpet. What time roughly did you get there?
They were letting people in check in about 5, and I wanted to run out and take a quick picture with the Coffee with Kenobi microphone by the Falcon, so I did that and came back. So we probably got checked in about 5:20.
Right, okay. And then you walked onto the red carpet?
Yes. Walked in, find your last name, and of course Z is easy to find.
Yep.
Grab my stuff, and then we walk out and take pictures, and you were spot on as usual. To the left was the huge way where all the stars and casts go, and where the Star Wars show was. And then to the right was a very, very narrow walkway where I was to walk, along with all the other press that wasn't in that little pin.
Right.
So we walked.
I was going to say, so you walked right to the end of the line, pretty much.
Uh-huh.
And then I think Nissan were right there. Is that right?
Yeah, you walk down, and then you're underneath the Falcon, and then you walk through this little door. Not so little door, really. And then all of a sudden you're on the huge, huge red carpet. It's all covered, so it's weatherproof.
Mm-hmm.
And on the left is the pin for all, the heavy hitters, Good Morning America, USA Today, Foreign Press, etc. And then there's the huge walkway, and then on the very, very right is you could probably fit about 8 people shoulder to shoulder, left to right on that side. So it was very nice. And so we just walked down very, very slowly and took pictures in front of some of the signs and heard cheering but didn't really hear anybody. And then we're about to get to the end, and I see Leland. So I went up and talked to him for a while. And then
so what did Leland have to say? The keeper of the holocron at Lucasfilm.
Oh, yes. He and I just talked a little bit about being excited. He said it was his second premiere. He admired what I was wearing. And we just kind of made small chat about the weather and how we were excited to see the movie and stuff like that. But I didn't ask him too much because I don't want to – I'm not interested in scoops. I'm interested in just kind of soaking in the atmosphere.
Absolutely. And that's what we discussed prior, just being there and being part of it and being able to experience and take everything in.
Right.
It's your first time doing this. You want to absorb all of that. You want to enjoy it for what it is.
Absolutely. And then when I was talking to Leland, Ray Park was there. I'm like, oh, cool. And he was super close to me. So I got a picture with him. He was very gracious. Peter Mayhew came by, but he was just kind of doing his thing. And then at the end, you get a picture underneath this huge Solo World premiere. And they said, do you want to go to the theater or do you want to go back to the red carpet? And I had like 45 minutes till the movie started. And I thought, well, I'm going to go back on the red carpet. So lo and behold, I do that, and James, I turn around and I see the familiar silver wavy hair of George Lucas.
Wow.
Yes, and I have never seen him in person at all. And he was walking towards me, and there was really no one between he and I besides a little tiny fence. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna try to talk to him. So I walked up to him, and there was no one between he and I. And I reached out and I patted him on the back and I said, hey, George, thank you so much for all you've done for us. Can I get a photo with you? And he looked at me and he smiled and he looked me up and down and he said, I'm afraid I'm just going to have to keep on walking. They're going to have me keep walking. And I said, okay, thank you. And he walked on and I ran ahead about 20 feet and got a selfie of me with him in the background. And my son fortunately took a lot of pictures of me talking to George. So I have that on. And James, I mean, you've seen George, of course. After that happened, I thought 2 things. I thought, one, I might fall down. My legs are so wobbly. I am so happy.
Yeah.
And then I thought, you know what? That's it. If nothing ever happens with Coffee with Kenobi, I got to talk to George. That's all that meant. And even if he said to me, you smell like horse manure, I didn't care. I got to talk to George.
So how was that? And do you regret asking him for a photo? I mean, you could have asked him anything.
No, I don't regret anything that happened. Okay. Not a single thing. Because, when am I going to get that chance again? I don't know what else I would have asked him. And I wasn't allowed to have a microphone with me, so I just had the memory.
Right.
And, that was great. And then literally about 2 minutes after that, I look towards the end of the red carpet, and there's Bob Iger. Wow. And he's got no one. So I went up and I introduced myself. I told him about the podcast. I showed him the logo, which is on the back of my phone case. I got a picture with him, and I thanked him for what he's done with Disney and Marvel, and he was very gracious and shook my hand and took the picture, and then off he went. So I feel like I got those two. That's good.
He's a really, really nice guy.
isn't he, though? Yeah, and very good shape.
Yes.
Yes.
I would imagine he would be any of us in a run or, trying to do push-ups or something. He looks incredibly fit and healthy for a man of his age.
I agree. I hope I look that good on that age.
Absolutely. And I think we'd be remiss, as we're talking about age, it's somebody's birthday as we're recording this.
That's right, George. It's George's birthday.
George is 74, so if you are listening, George, now that you've met the one and only Dan there, then, you may be tuning in right now, so we just want to wish you a very, very happy 74th birthday.
Yes, thank you, George. Thank you for giving me an early birthday present, too.
Yeah, very, very cool. So you've met those couple of people. Did you get to meet anybody else on the red carpet?
The red carpet, no, but at the after party, I talked to Eunice, I talked to Taylor Gray, I talked to Filoni, who I met before. I talked to Andy, who I talked to a bunch of times. I made eye contact with Woody Harrelson, but he was surrounded by a lot of his guards, so I didn't even bother there. I talked to Sam Witwer. I talked to Jason and Amanda Ward from Making Star Wars. I talked to Steele from Steel Wars.
Yep.
Yeah, I talked to Brian Young a few times.
That guy's full of Sith, I tell you.
I'll tell you what, he sure is. So it was pretty glorious.
So before you go and grab your seat, Dan, what else did you see on the red carpet apart from the guests? Nissan had some stuff on there?
They had some cool stuff there. Besides the guests, they had a life-sized Lego recreation of the Falcon cockpit.
Wow.
You might have seen a live stream. There were a number of stars and celebrities that would go over there and play with that, including Jon Favreau. And then I saw Peter Mayhew go over and check it out and pose for some pictures. And they had a full Solo Cups display of Solo Cups at one end that people were able to look at. They had I believe it was a Mazda Millennium Falcon style car that was there. I saw David Collins interviewing some people. I saw Matt Martin dressed up in his Lando Calrissian inspired suit with the yellow bird.
I think that was a Nissan car, actually, because Nissan were actually sponsoring the
Nissan, yes, that's what I meant to say. Yeah. So those are some of the other things. And then, of course, just the different photo ops of the different backgrounds they had of things like that.
And then you took your seat. So how long before the film started did you actually take your seat?
Yes, we walk in. We saw ours in the Dolby Theater. Apparently, you could go in there or across the street at El Capitan, but they had a sign on your badge, of course, where you were going to sit and your seating assignment. And then we had I went upstairs and we got our popcorn. They had little buckets of popcorn and drinks you could get. And then we sat down. I sat a few seats down from Brian Young, so we said hello.
Cool.
And then it was probably about 20 minutes before the movie started, and they basically just had the live stream on the big screen, which is, of course, huge.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, before they started the movie, all of a sudden it got real quiet, and there was this standing ovation, and George Lucas walked in and went and got his seat, and he was surrounded by his family and some people, and then Donald Glover walked in, and Emilia Clarke, and I saw Ron Howard and other people walking in. And then they showed the trailer, and a lot of people were kind of squirming at that because we were just about to see the movie. We didn't want to see the trailer again. And then it went dark, and they just jumped right in, show the Lucasfilm logo, everybody claps, and off we go.
Oh, right. So there was no introduction from Ron or from Kathy or anything?
Yeah, there was nothing. It was just they just dimmed the lights, and here we go.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit odd because normally they do, a little piece, and they'll thank everyone for coming, and they'll, just big it up and introduce all the stars, and maybe there was
expecting that, but there was nothing.
Okay. And what was the reaction like as the film is being played on the screen? Is everybody cheering when the first person walks out, or when?
There was a lot of cheering, and then actually once it started, people would laugh at the appropriate areas and kind of gasp at certain parts. There was some clapping, but overall, I think it was a good crowd, but they weren't. I didn't feel like I was at a sporting event like I did when I saw something like Infinity War, and that wasn't a red carpet premiere. That was just in my hometown. But yeah, I think they were just very, very just sort of in awe of the entire experience. They were fairly subdued. I mean, they were pleasant, but fairly subdued.
Okay. Now, after this, you got the ability to go to the after parties. Where was that?
That was after we walked out. They unlocked all of our phones because they give you a green case, lock case to put your phone, and I had to get an extra one to put my Apple Watch in.
Right.
So everybody, because they won't, of course, record anything. So then you go to the front of the theater, and they unlock them for you, and then you just kind of follow the herd. And you walk down these stairs and up through this other staircase, and then you're at this huge private party area that's still in that big complex where the Dolby Theater is.
Mm-hmm.
And we just walked right into the room. It was just a gigantic room and had the costumes from the film, and it had a couple of things where you could get your picture taken on a green screen. They'd insert you into one of the Solo posters.
Oh, very
and they had, full laid out meals and a couple of cash bars. Well, actually, the cash was just for tips, so everything was on the mouse, more accurately.
On the mouse, yes.
Yes. And then people go out on the balcony and talk, and then you just sort of made your way around and spoke with people and gave feedback on the movie.
So who did you see?
There I spoke with Andy a couple times, Andy Gutierrez. I talked with Amanda and Jason from Making Star Wars, talked to Steele there. Got my picture with Eunice, who was very, very funny, very friendly. Saw Ron Howard, talked with Dave Filoni a little bit, and asked him if he had a cameo in the movie, and he said no because he wants the movie to be good, so he doesn't do that.
Oh, okay.
I talked to Leland, and talked to Matt, Martin, and AJ. Talked to Justin and Kristen, and Justin's boss. Also, they're all from Lucasfilm, of course. Talked to Scott Bromley for a while. We talked a lot about the Arrested Development skit that he did with Ron Howard on the Star Wars show, and that was fun to get his kind of perspective on that.
Right.
And my son and I just, sort of enjoyed getting the atmosphere in and just sort of getting the lay of the land and just enjoying everybody.
And did you manage to glean any tidbits or anything exclusive from any of those people?
I did not. No one really talked about it. Everybody wanted to know what everyone thought.
Okay.
But other than that, it really was just kind of more like an excitement about just sort of talking about the experience, and then just people just sort of, gossiping and talking here and there. But nothing really related to what's going to happen with Star Wars.
Okay. So now...
relief for people, I think.
Absolutely. So now, obviously, this is spoiler-free, so we're not going to give anything away about Solo, because everyone needs to go and see it on the 24th, 25th, whenever it comes out in your respective areas. But putting you on the spot, what did you think?
I really, really liked it. I liked it a lot. I like Rogue One more.
Okay.
And I'll go into that more after the embargo lifts. But I enjoyed it. I had to kind of think about some of it after a while. But then once I kind of got past that, it's sort of hard, as you know, James, because not only are you dealing with the emotion of seeing a brand new Star Wars movie, it almost becomes an afterthought because of the red carpet experience and just everything leading up to that and the hype and seeing the Falcon outside on the street. And you're sort of overwhelmed by all these wonderful Star Wars sensations. And then all of a sudden I looked at my son and I said, oh, I'm about to see a brand new Star Wars movie for the first time, and George Lucas is in this room. Mm-hmm. And it just sort of hits you, and then it starts, and boom, and you're in there. I will say this. Alden Ehrenreich is fantastic. Like, people were worried about him. Some people were worried. You don't have to be worried, and I can honestly say Harrison Ford is my favorite star of all time. And I absolutely love him, and I love Indiana Jones, and I love Han Solo. Alden made me forget about Harrison Ford. And that's I legitimately mean that from the bottom of my heart. And that's not to disparage Harrison, because I love Harrison, but Alden does a terrific job. He's a believable younger Han Solo. He's got the demeanor. He's got the swagger. He's got just the right amount of vulnerability. His chemistry with Chewbacca is great. This is very much a Chewbacca film more than any Star Wars film we've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And Lando is, of course, Donald Glover. No one was worried about him. I love Billy Dee, but he doesn't have the same kind of gravitas as Harrison does, and it's just a fact. But he's tremendous. The whole cast is good, and I think some people are going to rave about L3. It's very much a success. It's very much a success.
Okay. So overall, where does this fit in if you had to rank all the Star Wars films? Is this one of your favorites, or where does it fit? Obviously, you said you like Rogue One more.
I do. I think this is the middle of the pack.
Right. Okay.
I really like it a lot, but I definitely don't feel the same as I did when I left The Last Jedi or The Force Awakens.
Okay.
So I would probably place it probably right square in the middle.
Okay.
I think. And again, being in the middle of Star Wars is higher than just about anything else, so it's still amazing.
Absolutely. Is there anything? Well, let me put it into perspective. In terms of the overall story now, going all the way from episode 1 to where we are in episode 8, do you know more now? you feel you know that there are bits that are fleshed out and you can appreciate other episodes more or other scenes more?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure yet, to be honest with you. I think there are some things that are interesting. There's definitely some unique revelations, which I won't get into at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think it adds a little bit more to an appreciation of Han Solo as a bit more of a character.
Okay.
But there's nothing in it that is groundbreaking, I don't think.
So no major shocks that we're going to go, oh wow, that really fills in a huge gap that we didn't know about.
There is, but not to that degree. It's hard to explain. When you see it, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I know that's vague, but that's very purposeful.
No, but that's we said no spoilers, and we're going to keep to that. And it's just it's just about hearing what you think, seeing it for the first time, and obviously you'll see it more than once, I'm assuming.
Oh yes. In fact, I got invited to see it again the day after, but and I wanted to, but instead I went to Disneyland.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was good. That was good too.
Okay, so that was all on Thursday, and then you went to Disneyland on Friday. And what did you do on Saturday then?
Saturday was the press conference.
Oh, okay. So do you want to walk us through that?
Yeah. So I got there and walked in, found it's very well hidden, because they have it in an area, but you're not supposed to say where it is, and you're not supposed to, on anything you do on social media, you're not supposed to geo market. So you're not supposed to say where it is so people won't crash it. And I'm walking down to the hall where it's supposed to be, and the door to my right opens, and I see Donald Glover walk out. And he was close enough to me that I actually thought, I'm going to ask him for a picture. But as soon as I thought that, about 4 or 5 people surrounded him, and I thought, nah, it's not worth it. So I kept walking, went in, signed in, and the place is huge. I put some images of it on Instagram and on our Insta story and on my Patreon page. But they had posters of all the characters. They had a little display of all the costumes from the other night. They had a green screen effect where you could put on a cape and walk towards this little spot, and they would put you in the poster with all the cast walking towards the screen. So, I'm in a cape, and next to me is Alden, and it's just pretty fun. Yeah, it's pretty unique thing. And then they had the Falcon. The traveling Falcon was there, which was tremendous because I didn't think I'd get a chance to see it because they're pretty far away from where I am. But they had it there. And as a bonus, James, they had a character. They had Chewbacca there in the costume. And this costume was very similar to the one that people may have seen on the red carpet on the streaming service on StarWars.com.
Right.
It didn't look like, it's a costume, of course, but it didn't look like one. And the mask was so good, and the way the character's eyes looked, it looked like I was looking at Eunice. It was tremendous. So I was actually as nervous about that, even more so than anything, because not often do you get to get a picture in the cockpit of the Falcon with a life-size, life-looking Chewbacca.
Mm-hmm.
So before that happened, they said, we're going to go in for the press conference soon, and Chewbacca will be here after, so just do the press conference. So I walked into the other side of the Falcon, and Sarah Woloski from Skywalking Through Neverland was there, and she was super cool. So I videoed her walking into the Falcon and walking around, and then she returned the favor and videoed me walking through the hallways, and that's, of course, magical. And then we took turns taking pictures of each other at the Jajaric table. Then we went to the press conference, and I made sure to sit as close as I could, so I ended up in the second row. And about 5 minutes later, it started, and then that went really well. And then towards the end, Anthony Carboni was he was running it, and he said that we only have time for one more question. I raised my hand, and he said, "Okay, you, sir, in the blue shirt," because I had a dry-cleaned, bright blue shirt that I was wearing. So he called on me, and I said, "This is a question for Ron or the Kazans or even Alden. In a world of continual moral ambiguity, what kind of challenges do you face in creating the character of Solo?" And quite honestly, they seemed really pleased with the question. So Ron looked right at me and talked for about a minute or so. And then the Kazans took over and talked a little bit to me. And then Donald Glover jumped in and he talked about it too. And you know how this is. You've done this a lot. When the people you're asking these questions to lock eyes with you and talk to you, it's just a really wonderful experience.
Absolutely.
And quite honestly, before it happened, I was a little nervous. And I thought, you know what? I don't have time to be nervous. This is a lifetime opportunity.
Absolutely.
And once I prove to myself that I can do this, then everything else becomes gravy. And so I just ignored being, a little nervous and as soon as I called him me, I just felt this incredible calm wash over me, and I did my thing. And it was great. And then they all left, and everyone clapped. And then I made sure to go on the stage and get some pictures of where everyone was. Mm-hmm. Left and got the swag bag. And then I went back into the press room where all the other stuff was and got my picture with Chewbacca. Took pictures of the Solo merchandise. And then this is something interesting, James, as I was leaving the Falcon after getting those pictures with Chewie, because basically the lady taking the pictures, she takes your phone and she says, "No, I'm just going to take pictures, so you just pose and do whatever for about a minute." So we just did all kinds of random stuff, kind of like we're touching the controls, do a light speed. Chewie raises his hands. We just have some fun. And then as I'm getting up, because it's a bit awkward to get out of the seat, Chewbacca looks at me and in regular English, not Shriwook, says, "Are you Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi?" And I just was sort of taken aback because I didn't expect Chewbacca, A, to know me, or B, to talk English. And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Yeah, Corey used to be on your show. You guys do a great job. I never miss a show. Keep up the great work." And I said, "Well, thanks, bud." And I walked out thinking, today is the 5th anniversary of my podcast.
Yep.
I just got in the picture. I just sat on the Falcon with Chewbacca, and then he told me he likes my show. So, I mean, obviously it wasn't unison there, but it was just kind of a nice little pat on the back from the universe saying, you're doing a good job. Keep it up. So that was sort of how I ended my day. And then I went to In-N-Out Burger and got on a plane, took a red eye, and got home.
Wow. And then you ended up doing the garden.
That's right.
Back down to earth with a bang.
That's right. Literally. Yes. So that was the experience. It was pretty wonderful. And you know how it is when you're in that moment, it just seems very calm and this is the way it's supposed to be. This is the new normal. And then the next day you think, whoa, that was not a body experience. That actually happened.
So the most important question of all is, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy yourself?
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I feel like I smiled the entire time.
You did. All the pictures and all the video and everything that we saw, you had a grin from ear to ear.
Yes. Well, thank you. I got a lot of good feedback, and my wife said she loved it and she was proud of me. So that means everything.
Fantastic.
And my son thought it was cool that I got a picture with Chewbacca, so I got major dad points. My older son thought it was wonderful. In fact, I think he wishes we were still there.
Good. So a worthwhile experience for both of you.
Absolutely. It was wonderful. I couldn't recommend it more.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for letting me come on and talk to you and to find out everything about your amazing LA adventure and finding out more about Solo: A Star Wars Story.
Hey, James, thank you so much. You are really good at this. You should have a podcast and a website of your own.
Really? That's not a bad idea. Maybe we can get onto that.
We've done it. And, of course, those of you listening know that James is absolutely one of the very best people out there. Jedi News is the place I go to first for all of my news. Before I go to StarWars.com, I go to Jedi News. That's because James knows his stuff, he's passionate, and he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. Thank you so much for doing this for me.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime, Dan.
This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.
There's no one here. Move along.